Okay, so this is the final. Remember, you have to speak something when you are there. Don't silently stand. So whatever you are doing, keep on speaking something about it.
Good afternoon, respected sir and my dear friends. Mm, just a minute. Yeah, the slides are opening.
So by the time your slides are opening and you are sharing, you keep on doing that work. So yesterday you have committed a couple of mistakes about which uh, like one was that giving not properly evaluating. You have to do peer and self evaluation, but you have to test your skills of evaluation, how to evaluate. That is what is very important. So you can't randomly give points to everybody, full points or whatever way. We told you earlier, this is fourth time. So such mistakes are not pardonable. You keep on sharing your screen. Once the slide will come, I will stop speaking. The slide has yet not come, which you are supposed to share. Secondly, we told that you have to edit your response. If there is any mistake, then edit. Don't resubmit. That is very clear instructions now. Fourth time in fourth season. Okay. I'm surprised that why so many times the same thing I have to keep on telling to a very grown-up adult young students, master students. Why don't they get an idea once it is said, well, it is to be done. Why the same instructions I have to repeat every 6 months, and this is the fourth time, final time now. Now you are all going to go out in the market, in society. So again, your slides are still not coming. So I'm speaking more. Still, you can, you have to share that screen, that tab. Now, yeah, now it is there. Okay, so now again, see, this is our objective is to make your literary sensibilities powerful and digital skills also. That's why today only I had one message from a friend that why are you still doing online? Everybody is doing offline now. So I told that it is for both. As a teacher also I learned something, and our students also need to learn a lot now. When they will become tomorrow's teacher, then if you don't know, then what kind of teachers you will be, or whatever work you will be looking for. Basic skills in digital things, if you don't have, then it will be a highly problematic thing. People will say that the students of these universities are not skilled, so it is better they don't apply. It's better they don't apply, and many other people who are skilled may also not get a job because of few who are unskilled. A few who are unskilled. It is better not to study and remain abound rather than study and not learn skills. આના કરતાં એ સારું કે આપણે કોઈ ડિગ્રી જ ન લઈએ. એટલે કહી તો શકીએ કે અમે તો અભણ છીએ, અમને કંઈ આવડતું નથી. પણ ભણ્યા પછી યુનિવર્સિટીઓના લેબલ આપણે ઉપર લગાડ્યા પછી આપણે સ્કિલ ડિસ્પ્લે ન કરી શકીએ તો it is very problematic. Okay, so you can start now.
So, my topic is The Ministry of Utmost Happiness by Arundhati Roy. In this novel, we see that there are so many dimensions covered, so many various types of cultures, and it is we can say that it is a multi-dimensional novel, and there are so many things connected. One side, transgender, Kashmiris, Dalits, Muslims, Hindus, and the politics. Everything is connected like a cobweb of narratives. And I'm going to deal with themes, then other some what critics have said, some quotations, quotes, and citations. So the theme first one is corruption, political violence, capitalism in the novel. In this contemporary post-colonial Indian politics. So in this novel, that politics has lots of influence on the life of marginalized people, that they are not getting proper rights, and they are suppressed and oppressed by the mainstream people and those who are in power positions. Then the Indian Army receives the brunt of all criticism for their seemingly limitless corruption and unwarranted violence against Kashmiri citizens, all for the sake of profiting from the war. They are fueling the very conflict that they claim to be fighting against. While Indian military officials in Kashmir claim to believe in Indian nationalism and supposedly want to integrate Kashmir into their country, in reality, they want the conflict to continue simply so that they can continue to profit from the war. So they want the war to continue, and they are very happy with that. Then second thing, that Indian officials are prone to killing innocent Kashmiris and pretending they are dangerous terrorists because they are awarded for this. So they are killing very innocent people just because they get awards and promotions. Indian soldiers are willing to undermine their own supposed mission to win the war against Kashmir for capital gain. Not only they are simply not doing their job, they are willfully harming Kashmiris who are actually technically Indian citizens, which furthers their characterization as corrupt. Then Naga, a corrupt journalist. Biplab later reveals that when Naga begins to collaborate with the government, he receives promotions and accolades at work because he is the first journalist to hear about special government-related news. As a character, Naga embodies the corruption of the media. In spite of his so-called progressive values, he is ultimately willing to tell only the stories the government wants him to tell, because doing so grants him a position of power within the profession. Like soldiers, Naga is willing to stray from his values due to the influence of capitalism. So, in this moment, again, readers are exposed to the idea that those who seem to be fighting to an end a conflict often profit from its continuation. In reality, they stand to bring unending conflict and therefore unending profit to the businessmen who take advantage of the political situation. Then, the next theme is gender identity, social division, and coexistence. Anjum, she is a transgender hijra and she has special society status. Although Anjum lives in a highly sexist society that privileges the masculine over the feminine, her identity as a hijra grants her a special social status that sometimes protects her. Traveling to a popular Muslim shrine, Anjum and a host of other pilgrims are attacked by Hindu terrorists seeking justice for Hindu recently killed by Muslim militants. Every Muslim in the area is massacred except for Anjum. Now here she is saved. Why? Because she is spared, because as one of the extremists observes, killing hijras brings bad luck. So in this instance, Anjum's marginalized identity literally saves her life. One of the characters, Nimmu, another hijra, with whom Anjum lives, relates the experience of being a hijra to the conflict between India and Pakistan, linking the gender binary to the violent partition of the two countries. So, she is not able to maintain the two identities that are confined in her own body, and so she finds conflict. She compares it with the conflict between India and Pakistan. So, throughout the novel, India-Pakistan conflict is portrayed as senseless violence, a war between two peoples that had forgotten they were once neighbors who had been to each other's weddings. Just as Indians and Pakistanis are not really separate from one another, the masculine and feminine genders are not necessarily opposite, that they are in conflict with each other. Aftab disagrees with this Nimmo's pessimistic outlook, thinking to himself that he was happier than he had ever been. This suggests that he himself might also have an understanding that the gender binary is artificial and the recognition that multiple genders can coexist within the same being. In a way, Anjum embodies the concept of coexistence. She is able to accept in spite of all the hurdles, by allowing two genders considered to be fundamentally opposite to coexist within her. By characterizing this as a special and even sacred identity, Roy demonstrates the power that comes from embracing differences rather than seeking to destroy it. And next, social hierarchy and social inclusivity. While the conservative characters in the novel seek to uphold the hierarchy that privileges them, the oppressed and marginalized characters continuously fight for greater equality in their society. By demonstrating the difference between the characters that believe in hierarchy versus those that combat it, Roy ultimately demonstrates that social hierarchy is isolating and perpetuates violence, whereas social inclusivity allows characters to live more happily and peacefully. Here, the Biplab Das Gupta, the narrator of the part of the novel and Brahmin government official who works with the Kashmir conflict, serves to exemplify the elitism and conservatism of India's Hindu upper classes. Das Gupta introduces himself as the upper class oppressor from every angle, or in other words, a treasury-less man. Now, in addition to being an oppressive but successful functionary of the government, Biplab is an alcoholic with a failing marriage. What's more, he has never had the courage to tell Tillo, the headstrong South Indian woman with whom he infatuated, that he likes her. So his immediate noticing of Tillo's skin color, an important class marker in India, demonstrates how deeply he has been conditioned to think first and foremost of social status. Biplab ends up unhappily marrying another Brahmin woman named Chitra. This suggests that his reluctance to tell Tillo about his feelings doesn't just stem from a childish fear of talking to women. Likely, his resistance stems from an inability to step across the class lines that separate them. Thus, Biplab's class privilege doesn't only isolate him in a broad sense from members of other classes, they cause him to isolate himself in his personal life as well. So, by contrast, Anjum and the community she creates completely disregard social hierarchy and espouse radical inclusivity, which is what allows them to have such a loving and nurturing community. The one clear criterion was that Jannat funeral services would only bury those whom the graveyards and imams of the dunya had rejected. Anjum elevates and celebrates a human life that is discarded and disrespected by the society in which she lives. It is through this that she is able to build community and business. The funeral home is almost always bustling with friends and customers. In addition to accepting customers in spite of their low social status, Anjum also accepts customers regardless of their religion and make a point of performing the correct funeral services for each one. So, comical event, she decides to perform a funeral ceremony for Miss Udaya Jebin's birth mother, a communist revolutionary who has died. She wants to know what is the correct rituals for the funeral of a communist. This enduring but misguided assumption that communism is a religion with specific rites for funeral services demonstrates the extent to which Anjum is not only accepting of people from all different backgrounds, but also respectful of those differences. So the overall vision Roy creates of India is thoroughly dystopic in the level of violence the powerful inflict on the powerless, the military occupation of Kashmir, the murders of Muslim and lower caste people at the hands of Hindu mobs all clearly implicate social division as the root of violence. By contrast, Jannat Funeral Services provides the only space of utopia. Through juxtaposing Jannat, which exists far on the margins of society with the violence and isolation that even the most privileged members of mainstream society experience, Roy clearly illuminates the values of social inclusivity rather than hierarchy. Then next is religion and power. Among these various struggles, one of the most salient is religion. Much of violence that the characters observe and experience in the novel stems from the conflict between Hindus and Muslims. The blending religion and government clearly allows for continued violence against religious minorities in the country. While Kashmiris are united in their desire for freedom, even this new generation of militants managed to make extremists their interpretation of Azadi. The Kashmiri word for freedom was, what does freedom mean? There is no God but Allah. So they want their religion to be imposed on the people. This interpretation of freedom clearly limits, in fact, the liberty of any citizens who live under the rule of these militants and sets the precedent for an intolerant Kashmir. Even if the militants were to win independence with an ideology like this, the citizens would likely to continue to experience at least some degrees of religious conflicts and violence. And these are some of the observations to so confidently believe oneself to be on the right side of history is risky. For a writer, especially in that Bellamy glow of self-regard, complacency can easily take the root. And good prose demands a measure of self-doubt. The worry that nags at a writer, that forces her to double back on her sentences, unravel and knit them up again, asking repeatedly, is this clear? Is this true? Is this enticing? Is this hook as a slackness to it that suggests Roy has abdicated some of these anxieties? Then another by Nagendra and Mayura. The novel is a political novel which questions the socio-political situation in India. Keeping Anjum at the center of various narratives in the novel, Roy has emphasized with the sufferers of numerous incidents that happened in India, be it national emergency, Godhra Kand, cow lynching or Bhopal gas tragedy. Through this novel, Roy has also implicitly criticized the political atmosphere of India. Then we have the Ministry of Utmost Happiness is not a picturesque tale of sorrows, but a saga of small-time renegades of fate who emerge as a portrait each of a singular fortitude through the darkest hour. The true measure of democracy is how it treats its most marginalized and vulnerable people. For some of us, it is the condition of powerless and marginalized, not the powerful, that best reflects the character of a country. It's all people on the margins who are able to observe a country most clearly from all angles rather than following the lead of how people at the center of the country, at the center of its norms, want to see themselves. Then we have ecofeminism, devises women as having the capability to generate ecological change. It can be seen as asserting women by emphasizing their close association with nature. Roy, through her novel, was able to encourage and induce women to become the representative of change. She has penned all the events beautifully in her novel and proficiently highlights the uncertain relationships with women and nature in the present world. And this, last but not the least, the best one, the beginning of the novel, which also I find very interesting. At Magic Hour, tells Roy, as the beginning of fairy tale. However, the fantastic imagery of the Magic Hour takes a sharp turn with the introduction of flying foxes and crows, banyan trees and old graveyard. All images that are in contradiction to the initial fairy tale opening. There is a binary opposition between the magical charm of the opening lines and stark realities that follows. It must therefore be noted that this novel has no element of magic realism. In Waterstone's interview held on 5th June 2017, Roy emphatically asserts that the creatures and characters populate her novel are not magical. All the images that appear are neither magical nor metaphorical but true. And these are some of the interesting quotes. And it doesn't matter. I am all of them. I am Romeo and Julia. I am Leila and Majnu. And Majnu, why not? Who says my name is Anjum? I am not Anjum. I am Anjuman. I am Mahfil. I am a gathering of everybody and nobody, of everything and nothing. Is there anyone else you would like to invite? Everyone is invited. And this the most beautiful quote, which is written also in very different style in the novel. How to tell a shattered story by slowly becoming everybody? No, by slowly becoming everything. And these are my citations.
Yes, questions? Okay.
May I?
Yes.
Okay, so Khushbu, my question is that what do you find so specific in this novel, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness?
The most specific thing that I found about this novel is that the novel is dedicated to the unconsoled. Uh, the voice, the people who are not able to speak, their voice is spoken by Arundhati Roy without any kind of fear that some political or power people might try to abuse her or to try to harass her. So she is a very brave writer, we can say. She has portrayed the sorrows and voices of Dalits, Muslims, untouchables, women, Kashmiris, Hijras, and such characters that are left out from the mainstream of the society. Roy has tried to give justice to these characters and through Anjum's guest house by accepting all these characters. So in this novel, author tries to give voice to the voiceless.
Khushbu, can you tell something about Hijra?
Yeah, I don't know why, but I selected the topic for Hijra for that dissertation also. I don't know why, but I had on 5th of Feb, I got a great opportunity to meet one Hijra, and I was so happy that I can't tell. I felt as if I have met some great personality. And the reason could be that I have selected my topic on the same subject. So, but the thing is that they can, what happened then that they can clap hands and they put an entry in any kind of functions or parties. They demand money. These things are continuing from the past. And if you want to change the scenario, then the way is through the education. We want our society to accept this kind of gender in all the aspects of life, like in school, colleges, and in jobs. Once they get civilized, then we may hope that they won't have to go to any parties for such demands. And it is not that individual efforts or one family does, but it is through the society overall. And so together we can bring a change in the society. Thank you.
Okay, so this was the final one, and a few comments that we can discuss here is like uh, the quote which you said, no, finally, that this is written also in an interesting way. So now that is how either you have to write or put a photograph. You write it in a different way. So you are distorting that very idea what you want to say. Now it is possible. No? We can take a photo and we can put. It is not impossible task. So that way you can think of this. Secondly, your citations are good. You refer to quite an interesting source, and in text also you have used. At least in last 3 4 slides, you have used them as an in text also. When there are two writers, you have to use write only the first writer's last name. First, not both. Mohsin and Taskin. You have written two, so not two writers. One, and that is why this is for everybody. That is why only first writers, main writers, last name is recorded alphabetically. That is the importance of first writer, who will go into the records alphabetically also. So that is why only one you have to write, not both. And then in the initial slides, when you made this comment about Indian military or Indian army officials, this now this needs to be cited also with some authentic source. Uh, Otherwise, whatever judgment is made in the novel or as a critical observation becomes faulty. And even in the novel, it is very few people who are corrupt. So it can't be generalized that Indian army is corrupt. You have to be very careful in selecting the word. So that makes, otherwise, by looking at one corrupt personnel in the novel, we can't make a sweeping observation that everybody is corrupt. And it's just a matter of what kind of language you use. So you can say particularly so and so person is corrupt instead of generalizing everything in that. So that is because when you make anything about political comment, then you have to be very selective. You have to base your argument also on some very good research. Yeah, also, many times such kinds of controversial things are not accepted by the governments, so they do not become authentic as such. So then you have to make a gap there that this is how it is. Okay, so that is, and now see, if you look at your title and what we have discussed, you yourself, if you ask a question, then also perhaps you may say that it is not perhaps appropriate. You want to talk about narratives. You are not, and then you are talking about themes. Are you seeing that? You in the title you say narrative, and then in the table of content, very first thing is themes. So that also you have to again ask yourself that if I want to talk about themes, then why I don't make a title based on themes? Why I say narratives then? Narrative, then only narratives you have to bring in. Okay, but still citations and the things are given quite well. So that, and all the quotes that you put, you have to organize that how you use. Now, what you see is that here is a dot, here is a dot, there is a dot everywhere. Those dots are good enough, but how to connect and what trajectory to be made is still missing. And the trajectory which is necessary, that is to be also organized. So you have to select things properly in putting your presentation also. Okay, fine. So with this, we end our morning session, and we will have a break now for before we go for the afternoon session.